We need to understand that the research is not about a bunch of cells and molecules, and MS does not exist under a microscope. It is about the humans that are living with the condition every single day and how that disease impacts their quality of life.
I have to tell you that being here today with you, but also seeing the great 3 days of the ECTRIMS conference, I feel really overwhelmed. I feel amazed and I feel thankful.
The question is, how can people with MS be empowered to take part in setting the research agenda in the coming years?
For me, a great tool is knowledge. Having the information is for me having a tool. How can I also take part in making myself feel better and be better?
Welcome to the final episode of a 3-part series on a special ECTRIMS event held recently for people with MS. I'm Naomi Smith, and you're listening to the ECTRIMS podcast. ECTRIMS is committed to ensuring the latest research on multiple sclerosis unveiled at its annual congresses reaches the people most affected by it. In a first for the world's largest MS research organization, a special ECTRIMS 2022 event specifically for people with MS was held on the 29th of October in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. During this free event, available on-site and online and in several languages, MS experts discussed the key insights of ECTRIMS 2022. The event was chaired by ECTRIMS President Martin Torre and the local organizing committee chair Bernard Oud-de-Haag. In part 3 of this recording, MS Patient Experts Jana Hlavacova with the European Multiple Sclerosis Platform's Young People's Network and Helga Weiland, Vice Chair of MS South Africa, discuss the involvement of people with MS in conducting research.
And now we are more or less changing gears, because it is not about what has been said in the past 3 days, but it is the involvement of people with MS. Helga, this is your presentation. Helga Weiland is a vice chair of the MS South Africa team and co-chair for the engagement coordination team from PROMS. Well, I have the privilege to introduce her, and I'm very happy that you're willing to give this presentation, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Yes, I am a person with MS, and I have notes, and all my words are small and short. So, addressing the involvement of people with MS in conducting research. And I wish you a good day, and thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you today and join in the discussion. So, when we were briefed about what to talk about with regards to people with MS and how the involvement should be, we started thinking about the research agenda. And in the research agenda, the question is, how can people with MS be empowered to take part in setting the research agenda in the coming years? And which is the best way to understand the function of the research agenda? A research agenda is a plan or a framework. Future activities will coincide with this plan and maintain focus to the study. But I'm not a scientist. I'm a person with MS and consider myself an expert. That is, with the lived or the experiential knowledge that is necessary in any research. Research is without doubt the most important factor when it comes to the only way to advance improvements in the treatment and understanding of multiple sclerosis. We need to understand that the research is not about a bunch of cells and molecules, and MS does not exist under a microscope. It is about the humans that are living with the condition every single day and how that disease impacts their quality of life. And to set the research agenda, we need to engage with patients with MS and let them partner in defining it. And I've given it much thought as to how to empower MS patients to take part in setting the research agenda, and have come up with some ideas. And the question is, how was it done before? Did it work? Did the patients have a voice in the research? And if the answers to that questions are yes, then do the same again. However, if you're asking me as a person with MS, if those questions are all answered yes, then I disagree. The patient living with MS must be fully engaged in as a research partner, and perhaps the molecules and cells were addressed, but the voice was the voice of the patient heard. And how are we going to choose the research agenda with the MS patient at the center, not the cells and molecules? So what should be done differently? The person with MS needs to be at the center of research. So setting a research agenda. For the sake of this presentation, let's say the research agenda needs to be finding a cure for MS. And in the meantime, while the researchers find the cure, let's improve the quality of life of the person with MS, and probably all the people that are affected by MS too. That still seems a bit broad to use as a research agenda, but it certainly is one that most people with MS can agree on. We can see that this is not going to be a practical or specific enough. And the next question would be, what do people with MS consider to be the element that impacts their quality of life most? Here one will get many answers, and they would probably relate back to the functional domains that each person has difficulty with and in turn affects their quality of life. Functional domains are the functions that are affected physically, emotionally, or cognitively by damage to the neurons in the brain, spinal cord, and optic nerve in multiple sclerosis. How can we measure them? By using patient-reported outcomes. The definition of a patient-reported outcome by the FDA is any report of the status of a patient's health condition that comes directly from the patient without interpretation of the patient's response by a clinician or anyone else. As you can see, I still have a very broad picture of what. Patients are not researchers, but are the experts when it comes to the functional domains and how they are affected. MS, as you know, is like a fingerprint, and every single person is a set of complex and unique symptoms that collectively makes up a common condition. But the question is really, how are we going to empower the patient in the process? There are several patient advocacy groups all over the world with people with and are affected by MS that belong to, and this is time for us to involve the voice of the patient through them. As we've heard in the presentation given in ECTRIMS, there are some fine examples of how that can be used to empower the patients. The PROMS initiative being a fantastic example. In this initiative, the patient is at the center of the research. The aim of the initiative is to define the functional domains, find patient-reported outcomes that relate to multiple sclerosis, then using reliable measure to record the PROs and develop policy into healthcare systems. So in other words, what do we need to know? How can we measure it? With which device? And what will that information be used for? The engagement coordination team is made up of 6 people with MS and 2 members from the MSIF and 2 from MS Society UK. The ECT is involved in every step of the PROMS initiative, a good example of how patients can be fully empowered into the process. Patient empowerment in research means being informed of what research patients can take part in, being involved in the decision-making and regarding the research process, and knowing their rights and responsibilities when taking part in research. Often patients don't know that research participation is available to them and their meaningful contribution is needed. Patients need to feel that they are co-partners in research and that they'll be more than just a source of data and are able to shape research. So how can we keep patients engaged in research? Keeping patients empowered and informed during, after the research and explaining outcomes, providing support and having access to the clinicians and researchers. Participation must not be tokenistic, but add true value and be considered research partners. Maintaining confidentiality in the information that the patient shares, and keeping the terms and processes of research understandable to patients. Also, providing regular feedback, including the patients where they are in a timeline of the research project, acting in the best interests of the patient. Patients need to know their legal rights to the participation in research and understanding the risks involved in research. The next question is best practices. Best practices in research refers to a systematic process used to identify, describe, combine, disseminate effective and efficient clinical and/or management strategies developed and refined by practicing clinicians. Interestingly, as a patient and not a researcher, I found it difficult to understand or to find a standard set of guidelines for best practices. It seemed that this varied greatly. However, best practice is about values and standards, identification and evaluation of potentially effective methods for each step or component of research. Combining most effective methods and testing combined methods. In my understanding as a patient, best practice comes down to acting in an ethical manner, and that can mean different things to different people. In conducting research, there are responsibilities, and there are responsibilities by the clinician. Be patient with the patient, to apply the best treatment plan, to be available to answer concerns regarding the condition, to act timeously when relapses or changes occur, to keep abreast of the best treatment information. The responsibilities of the patient is to stay informed via reliable sources, to manage your MS to the best of your ability, stay positive, communicate your concerns to your clinician well, know your limits, and take your medication as prescribed. The responsibility to researchers is to use ethical processes, respect the lived experiences of people with MS, be mindful that people with MS are not scientists and we need to be treated as such. My sincere thanks for this opportunity to present as the patient voice.
Please join us. Wonderful presentation.
And now it's my pleasure to ask Jana, which I did the first time, but now this is the second one in a row, and Jana Hlavacova, if I pronounce that more or less correctly, but I'm used to being mispronounced myself, but it's not a problem, I hope. She is a member of the European MS platform and went to the executive committee, became a board member, and now is the interim CEO. She has a background in law and also worked for the Ministry of Health in the Czech Republic. Please.
Thank you so much for a great introduction, and thank you so much for having me here. I have to tell you that being here today with you, but also seeing the great 3 days of the ECTRIMS conference, I feel really overwhelmed. I feel amazed and I feel thankful, extremely thankful for me as a patient to see more than 9,000 people giving their time, their lives, their dedication to helping people with MS, making them be able to live their lives to their potential is so precious. So thank you for, doing this, for being here, for sharing experience so that I know as a patient that my treatment is in the good hands. And I'm thankful that we can be here as patients as well. Because as Birgit was speaking about, something that MS takes a little bit or in large amounts from you is the control, the sense of control. So we can get it back, or you can't always, of course, let's face it, but to be able to take it back for how we live, but also how to adjust our lifestyles. But for me, a great tool is knowledge. Having the information is for me having a tool. How can I also take part in making myself feel better and be better? So thank you, ECTRIMS, for giving this opportunity to patients as well, and for EMSP and MSIF in partnering in delivering the information to patients. So, and I will have, yes, it works like that, right? It's good. My disclaimers are also my introduction that has been graciously done. Thank you very much. Just to say, I'm not an the healthcare expert. My background is a law. I live with multiple sclerosis for 12 years. I come from the Czech Republic, if you just were trying to find out where my weird accent's coming from. I'm a patient that benefits a lot from the provision of care that is by the Centers of Excellence, developed in the Czech Republic, by being treated early. And my motivation is I want to give back a little, but also to make sure and contribute to the fact that people will, all over around the world, will have similar chances. I'm the interim CEO. These are actually my disclosures, because being an interim CEO of European Multiple Sclerosis Platform, we of course have sponsors, so you can see them there. I'm an employee of Ministry of Health. I don't have double hats now because I'm on unpaid leave for quite a while, but it's great to see that even the governments are interested in patient involvement. That's the agenda I was working on. And saying that I'm not an expert, the information I'm using, they come from the European Center for Clinical Research Training, graciously giving it to EMSP to be able to inform other patients too. When speaking about clinical research, it's quite complicated for me, I have to say, so I tend to ask questions. So why? Why is it important? Why involving patients with MS in clinical trials, and how? Why to get involved in clinical trial research is more about thinking, why shall we be interested in patients? And I think I have a nice and easy job now, having heard the great speakers on the advancement of care. We, I think, can say with the certainty that without the research, there wouldn't be advancement in fighting MS, in improving quality of life people with MS, and ultimately finding the cure for MS as well. And it's important us to know that before any treatment reaches the patient on the market and can be prescribed, it has to go through the complex processes of clinical trials and be approved by relevant authorities to make sure that the treatment is safe and effective. So, and why do we need patients involved in clinical trials? Obviously, I'm not speaking about patients as a subject of the study. We cannot do clinical trials without them, but as actors. And I now think that it's more and more visible that patients are involved in shaping the clinical trials, as Helga was telling us, because we want to make sure that we are really targeting what is relevant to people living with the condition, that we can prioritize well, and that we can really see the full picture of this very complex disease. How can we get involved? I tend to put things in the boxes, my little lawyer's brain. There are various ways, and it's great to see that for us as patients, there are different ways. How can we participate? First is taking part in a clinical trial as a patient, as a participant, and what we know and what we should know for this, what we need is the accessible information, the awareness, education, sharing experience among patients. But this is very important, but not the only way, providing data as patients to MS registries. There is another way how to get involved and contribute to the research, to the advancement. And also, you can contribute as patient expert or on patient advocate by, for example, being member of the patient organization, by being member of the community advisory board, and be able to tell also the people that are developing clinical trials what is important for you, and also how is it possible for you as a patient to take part in a trial so it's realistic and it can be beneficial for the end goals of the research. Clinical research, we always need to find the information on what it actually is, what is the clinical study, what shall we know as patients, how to find the information, what's out there if I'm interested in a new treatment, and how to get involved in clinical trials. Please don't read this slide. I'm so happy for Daniel to make the nice introduction and also the explanation what are the different phases of clinical trials. It is complicated, but it's very important for us to know. And why is it important to be a little knowledgeable in what the different stages are is the knowledge gives you power. it also can serve for you to lose your fear. Just yesterday, I was talking with one of the doctors from the Czech Republic, and I was asking, so what do you think, what is important for you to tell to patients about being involved in clinical trials? And her answer was, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, and get the most information you can to be able to take part if it's viable for you. What is important? Usually, as a patient with MS, if you're considering taking part, or if your doctor is considering for you what is the good option, you will usually participate in phase 2 and phase 3, most of all trials. And we now know that these are the phases where it has been proclaimed that it is safe for patients to take part. And when you are participating in a clinical study, it's nice to know that you are receiving the most recent medical care, that the tests are performed, that you're monitored, that the costs are provided for you as well, and that it's confidential, that you have your rights, you can stop the participation anytime you wish, and that's nice for me as well, you're contributing to the development of a better treatment for the disease as well. There are strict ethical rules, and we know that for some patients, for some of us, there may be no or not that satisfactory options available yet. So being able to contribute to clinical trial, being a part of it, it also means that now among the population of the patients that are on a treatment that has been on market for 2 years, there are patients that have had it already for many more. It's a chance to get the treatment early, and just find the ways for you to get better. Rights of patients, be informed, just make sure that you really understand everything, that everything is in writing, and what's nice, you are always provided time to reflect, the information you need and the time to reflect. And where to find the information on where can you find the clinical trials and how to get involved. Always consult your medical specialist, of course. Be aware that not every center of excellence is conducting all of the clinical trials, but you can definitely be directed in a way. And also, we can definitely recommend the EU Clinical Trials Register, where you should find the information on the trials in Europe, the national registries, and also consulting patient organizations like national organizations, EMSP, MSIF, that shall be able to help you. And I know I'm a little now aware of the time. So another really important way is contributing to MS registries. I'm a really proud contributor to the register in the Czech Republic, knowing that collecting data is a fuel for research, that we can provide comprehensive evidence, and it can help us advocating also within the authorities for better quality of care for people with MS. So we should know that there are the clinical data that are reported on our healthcare state of mind by the healthcare professionals, and also the patient-reported outcomes that Helga was speaking about, and that I think is very nice to have a look at, because it's the information you can share on how you are in a long-term periods, proactively answering the questionnaires or the questions, but also passively through the apps that are now being developed. So definitely have a look at the national MS registries and also the international initiatives like the MS Base, Big MS Data, MSDA, and the program of PROMS, which is the patient-reported outcomes in multiple sclerosis that Helga was speaking about. And the last part is involving patient as stakeholders, as patient advocates, as patient experts. So now we know that we need patients to be involved in shaping the study design and shaping, because we need to know whether we are really targeting what people want, what is their experience, what shall we focus on, what's really important, how to prioritize, how to understand the burden of disease, and patients are those that can tell us. But what you need to be able to do this is to have information and education. When I was starting as a patient advocate and I entered the room full of experts, I was grateful that I had a chance to be there and contribute. Not really. I was unable because I was speaking different language. For me to be able to take part in the discussion and to give my testimony, it was important to be educated. And there are now the tools to do this, the education for patients expert, that will help you be a relevant part of shaping the clinical research and making sure with experts that we really target what we want. And I believe that's my final slide. And there is a big thank you again for attention, being active as patients, for being informed, being brave, and for ECTRIMS and the beautiful people that are helping patients with multiple sclerosis. Big, big thank you.
Whoa, big thank you to Jana, Helga, really very meaningful presentations full of insights for us also. Thank you very much for contributing so deeply to this discussion. And I'm very happy to open also this part for questions, reflections.
Any thoughts?
Yes, Daniel, please.
Okay, now I guess. So I do want to thank you both for kind of the talks. They were excellent. And I have to say that, you know, it might be a little bit different in Europe, but in the United States, when we do clinical trials and we do research, there isn't historically been a very strong patient voice in the room at the time of trial design. And we got a trial funded by an institution called PCORI, which is the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, that was federally mandated, so it was created by the government to fund clinical trials, and they're funding a trial that we're currently conducting, which is one of the comparative effectiveness trials of DMTs. And the thing that amazed me is that PCORI, one of the requirements for PCORI to get a trial funded was that you had to have the patient voice in the trial. And so we had the patient voice before the trial in terms of focus groups. We have an ongoing patient advisory committee that we meet with every 2 months, actually, to go over trial design issues and how the study is going. And I just wanted to kind of reflect how impactful that has been. Not something that I got trained in, but it really has improved our trial so much, and we've gotten so many ideas from our patient advisors, and also giving back constantly to the patients in the trial information on the study. That is something that we typically don't do. And I think it highlights how if people are not embedded in the discussion of how the design is occurring, it really never really meaningfully impacts. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for your testimony. And I would like also to add in this same direction that also I have been working in the consensus for vaccinations in people with MS. And also in this European initiative that was also held by ECTRIMS and also EAN, we also had the possibility to share our consensus to the patient's voice, and they also added very meaningful contributions in terms of shaping the way it is written, the way it can be translated to the patients to be more easy to understand, and also to decrease the fears that, for example, many times vaccination do sometimes make for the patient. So also in the same direction that Daniel was this is something that we as physicians, as scientists, we need to also learn how to integrate this into our protocols, into our timelines, but also very meaningful contributions but more is needed for sure.
Yes, well, I fully agree. I think we're not educated earlier on in our medical career to do it, and it's a learning process. I think it's a learning process for both patients, people with MS, and also doctors. I think we are learning each other how to behave and how to cooperate, and eventually the voice of the patient is crucial. Any therapy you want to advocate should lead to an improved life with the people of MS. That's where you're all focusing on. So, and without being clear saying what is important, the people with MS will not reach the goal they are also looking for. So both physicians, clinicians, researchers, and people with MS, I think they have ultimately the same goal, although not always clearly visible for each other. So it's a learning process. And what I saw already online is applaud for both of you with the presentation, very positive, and already answered some of the questions.
Yeah. I also wanted to thank you, Hannah, for making the point of the importance of also contributing through, for example, clinical trials. When I started working in this disease, there were no treatments at all. And it is because many of you have participated in clinical trials and have given their time and also have taken some risks. And this is why now we have such a fantastic landscape, and MS is one of the fields in neurology who has really changed in the last 25 years. And this is because of this. So every time I have to explain a trial to one of my patients, they say, but why should I participate in a trial now that we already have this and this? And it's getting harder and harder. But if we do not do this effort, and this is for both sides, we are not going to move forward. It is the only way to move forward through clinical trials. We do not have an illumination that comes down. We only can move forward through clinical trials. And the second point that you made that also is very, very, very important is through the registries, because it is the only way to collect long-term data. And this is a very, very long-lasting disease. And it is only through these registries that we do have long-term data, because clinical trials, they give you 2, 3, 4 years data, but never 20, 25 years data. And this is what we need to see if our interventions are really meaningful. So these two things are super important. And the third thing are the prompts. I think we are now understanding that not only physician-driven data or outcome measures are important, but also the patient's directly driven information are important to be collected. But then again, we need to participate actively in these three things, clinical trials, registries, and collecting prompts. This is really the only way to move forward. Thank you for making the point so well, both of you.
Thank you very much, too. And it's great to see how we align because our goals are the same. And I think in all of these areas, it's a win-win situation for everyone. Being able to take part in clinical trials, it can mean that you're helping yourself by having the treatment you need, but also the future patients, the other patients. And we know as patients that, as you said, it contains risk. It can. But everyone is doing the best to limit those. And with the protocols being so ethically designed. So if you're on placebo, it's only a limited time. It's usually by the other drug controlled. So it's really great that there is the trust that is within the patient community as well as the clinical community. And it is family being supported by this trust. We are able to take part in the trials. We are able to contribute to the registries without fearing that our data will be stolen. There is so much, it's so safe, I would say, and that we can now contribute even more by giving the PROMs, the patient-reported outcomes, and it's a large thing to explore. I'm already looking forward using some of the apps and some of the tools myself.
Coming from South Africa, as I said at the beginning and Bernard said in the introduction, I'm particularly grateful, and if I can be as bold as saying, I'm grateful for the whole of Africa, because the disease prevalence is so much lower, and clinical trials are so much less, that Africa is so dependent on the work that is carried out by the US, UK, and Europe. And I thank you for including us. And with PROMs, I'm very happy that we will be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Well, we are very happy to do that, of course. In the opening session of the ECTRIMS conference 3 days ago, I mentioned that doing research in MS is a network activity. It's about connecting people, connecting researchers from all over the world. But the people with MS are a crucial factor and a crucial element of that network. So the network and the connecting should also involve people with MS. So we are not only happy that we have taken this initiative, we are very happy that you embraced it, that you come here and give your presentation. We are very happy with the other speakers that presented. This is a huge, almost impossible task, but nevertheless tried to cover up. And you see on online that there are even more and more subjects and topics they want to be addressed and covered, but that's almost impossible. It's a very good start, I think, and it should end up with a tradition that it's not more than normal that we meet together and look forward how to do things in the future in a better way.
We have a question from the floor.
Yeah, thank you for the nice presentations. I fully support the message that patients should participate in clinical trials. But a lot of patients are actually not seen by a neurologist in a center of excellence. They're seen in what we call in Holland a peripheral hospital. So what can the MS community do to also include patients from these hospitals and institutes to get a really more inclusive MS patient portfolio into their clinical trials?
I cannot answer that for all countries, but when you're referring to the Netherlands, I can give you an idea about how we are also learning. There is what we call a working group, multiple sclerosis, for the Dutch Society of Neurology. And they organized meetings, and they at that meetings new trials that will be recruiting people with MS are mentioned, so that if there are people seen in one of these peripheral hospitals that fit to the inclusion criteria, they can be referred to the centers that participate. And there's also trials that actually include and are are done actually in these peripheral hospitals, in the larger ones. So we are taking steps ahead, taking steps further, so that there is a possibility to include more people, so that not only those seen at the tertiary centers are available or they have the possibility to participate, but also other people with MS seen in other hospitals.
So basically your advice to the patients is ask your neurologist if he knows if there's ongoing trials that
Yes.
as a patient you could enroll.
For the Netherlands, that's actually the situation, and I think there are very short lines between almost all neurologists and, well, at least our center, but also other centers involved.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
And I think COVID has also taught us that there are many ways for working from the distance. And also in the clinical trials field, I think there is a rethinking of all the process to make this point that you made more possible, not only in Netherlands, but then also in other countries, because many things can be done with telemedicine and with people that are involved and not only in the tertiary centers. So I think there's a whole process to try to shortcut these difficulties.
And if I can add, thank you so much for this question, because this is where the patients can be very impactful by actually asking the neurologist, by creating the demand. I'm a huge fan of centers of excellence, and we will do a lot to advocate for this, but it's not the case everywhere, and it might not be beneficial for some countries as well. So we really have to make sure that the care is accessible, the research is accessible, but I think that we, as patients, we have a great power in here in creating the demand and also informing somewhere the general neurologist, because I'm not speaking about Netherlands, but there are countries where our discussion in South Africa, the condition is not that prevalent, is not that treated, and actually the patients are those that have the information, sometimes more than the general neurologist. So by this, you will create the demand and also the sharing of knowledge among these neurologists. Thank you.
So with this, I want to close this session. I want to thank the speakers for doing a really, really great job, for the audience being here live, but also online, many, many people. I can only hope that the simultaneous translation has worked. And I hope that this will be the start of a tradition that will go on for many years. And I want lastly to thank my co-chair, Professor Martin Terray, President of ECTRIMS, who actually took the initiative to start all this. Thank you very much.
You've just listened to part 3 of a 3-part series of October's live-streamed ECTRIMS 2022 event for people living with MS. Thanks everyone for listening. A special thanks to the European MS Platform and the MS International Federation for their contributions to this event. The event was held in English with simultaneous translation offered in the live stream in German, French, Spanish, Italian, and Dutch. And videos with all languages can be viewed on our YouTube channel. Read more about these topics and more on our website, ectrims.eu, and do subscribe to the ECTRIMS podcast on Spotify and Apple, and follow ECTRIMS on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube.